This episode today is about the great scoreboard mystery of 1969. I was a 16-year-old, and my father, who was executive vice president of both the Denver Broncos and Denver Bears baseball, and also was in charge of stadium operations, all of a sudden came to me because the scoreboard operator had quit his job. So as my father quite often would do when he was in a pinch, he'd put his kids in, and all of a sudden we became his employee. My father, Jim Burris. I mention him a lot, but I think that most of these stories are so much about him as well as me that I think you, the viewer, are going to understand him a little bit better and make today's podcast even a little bit more interesting. Now, obviously, I wouldn't be around if it wasn't for my mom, Mary Jane Burris, or Jim Burris, my dad, but I was fortunately born into the sports business as my father was already in the baseball business when I was born. He was riding on trains with Babe Ruth and Rogers Hornsby and Dizzy Dean and going to mass with Joe DiMaggio and talking endless hours of hitting with the great Ted Williams. And all this was before I was born. He also was the assistant to the commissioner of baseball. He was president of 2 different minor leagues. He was executive of the year several different times and was general manager of the Denver Bears and part owner of the Denver Broncos for 20 years. I think the thing he would be most proud about, though, would be that most of his efforts were focused really on bringing Major League Baseball to Denver, which finally got done when the Colorado Rockies moved to Colorado in 1993. So a pretty good resume, I say, about him. So my genes are definitely rampant with baseball, and I can't thank him enough for it, because although he was a great guy and a great mentor to me, I also will tell you that he was a strong disciplinarian to his children, as we can all attest. I would have to say that with respect to baseball, I was probably born on third base with all this background. Now I'm in a manual scoreboard. Now, folks, there's only 2 of them that are in existence today, and that is at Wrigley Field in Chicago, where the Cubs play, and in Boston's Fenway Park, where the Red Sox play. But from 1996 through 1975, my job, in addition to sweeping Mile High Stadium with my friend Mike Little after baseball games and rock concerts, was to record every ball, strike, and out, run, hit, and error for every game that the Denver Bears played. So my daily agenda, therefore, was to arrive at the ballpark around 6 a.m., sweep the grandstands, clean the bathrooms. That would get us to about noon. Head on to McDonald's, where I could get a hamburger for 15 cents and fries for 12 cents and a Coke, and all for under $1. Go home, clean up, and around 3 o'clock, head back to the stadium, where I could hang out with the ball players and that were on the field or in the clubhouse. Sometimes I could take batting practice with them or take infield practice with them. And after that was over, I would saunter up to the Denver Bears box office, where my sister Barb was working, and hang out there for a little while until it was time to go to the press box and get the starting lineups, and make my way out to left center field, where the scoreboard was located. There, I would climb a 150-foot ladder. On the main level of that scoreboard was a 10 by 10 room that was called the control room, and that is where I had to look at 300 buttons or so and make sure that none of them popped up, but that's where I called all the balls, strikes, and outs. The next level up was where all the letters and the numbers are that you would manually put into places to put the name of the teams that were playing, the opponents, and the upcoming schedule of promotions or upcoming events. So when you got to the very top, however, of the scoreboard, which was about 150 feet up, there was a flat platform that had all the speakers that was the PA system for the stadium. In addition, there were 2 boxes on each side there where I loaded fireworks that we would shoot off with every Denver Bear home run. Now, I could devote an entire podcast to the shenanigans that did or didn't happen in that scoreboard over those 9 or 10 years. But I'm choosing today to focus on a particular incident that I am linked to and blamed for, and it's called the Great Scoreboard Mystery of Mile High. It was the fall of 1969, and I enrolled in Colorado State University and immediately pledged Sigma Nu fraternity. Well, it didn't take long for some of the frat brothers to link my name with my father's name, and therefore they automatically think that I have access to the stadium and for free tickets, et cetera, et cetera. But on September 21, 1969, the New York Jets were playing the Denver Broncos in Denver, and the brothers decided that it would be a good time to go down and watch a Broncos Bronco game. And surely, Bob, you can get us in. Well, I didn't have any access to any free tickets, but I did know that the Broncos rarely sold out. So I knew at the least we could probably buy some tickets, or I knew a ticket taker or an usher that could get us in. So we made the 65-mile trek down. We parked our car a couple blocks away. We went to the box office and we find out that the game is sold out. Well, the New York Jets featured great quarterback Joe Namath and several other great stars, and lo and behold, the game is sold out. I go to gate to gate to gate, and none of the ushers are going to let us in. So, as disconsolate as we were, we decided we had struck out. So we're walking back to the car, and all of a sudden I am fumbling for my car keys, but I realize that one of the keys on my keychain is the key to the scoreboard. Well, I don't know if those keys work for football games, but I know they work for baseball games because I still do the baseball games as I commute back and forth from Fort Collins during the spring and summer. But I also know that this is a definite no-no, because what we were about to do was definitely not a good idea. But up we went to the very top, and to our astonishment, nobody said a word. We had a great time. We watched the Broncos beat the New York Jets 21-19 on that day, and we scampered down the ladder, got in our car, went back, and it was a fun day. The Broncos go out of town the next week to Buffalo, but return on November 5th to host the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs are loaded with players like Willie Lanier and Buck Buchanan and Mike Garrett and Len Dawson, and I can tell you right now, it was a definite mismatch. But again, we went down and broke the proverbial first rule of criminology of never returning to the scene of the crime. Now, in my mind, it wasn't a crime that we had climbed up the scoreboard, but it was a definite no-no, notwithstanding the fact that there's a little bit of danger involved, not the least of which is that nobody should be up on the very top of the scoreboard. Anyway, I'm told that Captain Jerry Kennedy, who was the head of security and with the Denver Police Department, noticed a number of kids up on top of the scoreboard, which apparently nobody did 2 weeks ago. And he, through his binoculars, saw that one of the people looked like Bobby Burris. Well, that's because one of them was Bobby Burris. Well, the next voice we hear is an angry Jim Burris at the bottom of the scoreboard yelling up at us to get our butts down from there. So we came down. I received a great tongue lashing, one of the best I ever got from my dad, and we were banished from the stadium, and off we went back to Fort Collins. 4 weeks later, it's now November 2nd, and the San Diego Chargers are in town to play the Denver Broncos. And folks, I can tell you unequivocally that I was nowhere near Denver or nowhere near Mile High Stadium. But apparently, in the third quarter, one or two people, I'm told, scaled the scoreboard and replaced the words San Diego with the words hot dogs. So the final score reads Denver 13, hot dogs 0. Now, I don't know any of this, but about 30 minutes after the game had ended, the Sigma Nu house phone rings, and someone says there's a call for Burris on the pay phone down there, and I rushed down, and the voice on the other end was, "Bob, this is Jim Burris." And I am sitting here with Baron Hilton of the San Diego Chargers and owner of the Chargers and the Hilton Hotel Corporation. Something happened today that's very embarrassing to me and to the San Diego Chargers. And I said, "Dad, what are you talking about?" And that's when he tells me what happened. Well, folks, that only fueled the fire with the San Diego-Denver rivalry, which already was a hotbed anyway, because none of the teams in the AFL back then, Oakland, Denver, San Diego, and Kansas City, liked each other at all. Now, this looked like a definite slam in the face of the San Diego Chargers. So obviously, Mr. Hilton was very embarrassed, my dad was very embarrassed, and they all think it was me. Now, folks, that has been 55 years ago, and I am still linked to this mystery. In fact, my mother was in her last couple months of her life, and she asked me to come close to her one day, and she whispered, "It's okay, Bob, you can tell me now, did you do it?" But it wasn't me, and I sure wish that somebody would come forward, because somebody knows who did it. And I wish that somebody would come forward, not because I want to chastise him, but I want to shake their hand for pulling off the greatest caper on me that ever was. Now, I thoroughly enjoyed every moment of my time running the scoreboard all those years. And after you record every ball striking out for a little over 700 games, that's probably about 210,000 pitches. And I say this humbly, you kind of think that you pretty well know the strike zone. What's a ball? What's a strike? I'm sure this wasn't the first time I did this, but on this hot August day, the umpire behind the plate that day was the colorful Emmett Littleton Ashford. Ash is what we call them, but Mr. Ashford was an entertainer and is a show all unto himself. His shirts were French cuffs with cufflinks. His uniform, baseball umpire uniform, was immaculately pressed. He had that $1 million smile, and he had a unique way of calling ball one, ball two, or strike three. Anyway, a true showman. In fact, people paid money to see the umpire, Emmett Ashford, perform, so they say. But on this particular hot August day, I must have really been on the ball, because around the fourth inning, Mr. Ashford called timeout and walked out to the pitcher's mound. So I'm naturally thinking he's going to talk to the pitcher about something, but no, he keeps on going and walks to second base, at which time he looks to his left and looks up at me in the scoreboard, and with his hands in megaphone position screams, "Mr. Scoreboard Operator, would you please allow me to call the balls and strikes today?" So obviously he noticed that I was calling the pitches before he was. A definite no-no. Anyway, Emmett Ashford, what a great guy. I'm proud to say that he was the one that reprimanded me, because I'm also here to tell you that Emmett Ashford would become the first African-American to ever be an umpire in the major leagues. Thanks again for joining me for another edition of the Bob Burris Ultimate Backstage Pass to Sports, or in this case, a behind-the-scenes pass to the manual scoreboard. And remember, hit like, please subscribe, and also remember, the best is yet to come.